who are you and what do you do? What's your role?
I'm Stan Edwards. I'm a chartered surveyor. I specialise in compulsory purchase. Until the last 6 months, I wasn't a politician. I'm not going to be a politician. I'm standing for Parliament, but I'm not a politician. I am a professional, and I've dealt with a number of projects in Wales for the Cumbrae Development Corporation, Land Authority for Wales, Welsh Development Agency. So I'm used to dealing with bringing forward projects. And in my latter years, now that I've left the WDA, I've got my own company, and in that way, I'm also a gamekeeper turned poacher. So whereas I've in the past put sites together, I also challenge them now, which is quite interesting and quite good fun. That's what I do most of the time. But I've for the last 14 years, I've lectured part-time at Cardiff University on the MSc Planning and Practice and Research course on retail and office development. So this was the last year that I did that. I'm also an external examiner on MSc Surveying, that's real estate, at Reading University. So and I'm also a Christian. So it's quite a broad base of stuff that I do anyway, which hopefully people will see that that's the sort of things I want to bring to bring to the people, and also if elected, bring to Parliament, which is actually bringing in hands-on stuff rather than stuff that other people have said, other people have done. So I think it's important these days that people get fed up with professional politicians. So the strangest thing is that the reason I'm standing is that I've given myself someone to vote for, if you get what I mean. Mm. And if other people jump in, great. So that's a potted me.
What are the main policies of UKIP, for those who don't know?
I tend to focus on the ones which UKIP was formed for, which was to actually get out of the EU, which is a very, very undemocratic organisation. So I'm for a very, they talk about hard Brexit, I am, in football parlance, I'm studs up Brexit. I just want out. And also, the other things that are a great concern to me are our borders. It's not that I'm against immigration, but we need controlled immigration. One of the biggest problems in the world is mass migration. So the British, people say, we'll accommodate. No, we're Britain, and we will look after our own. So there has to be some form of organised allocations, distributions, what have you, and control of our borders. No problem. Now, there's nothing else apart from the safety and security of the British Isles, as far as I'm concerned. I'm also would like to get back our laws. I want to get back our fishing grounds, and I want to get back actually our culture and heritage and a pride in Britain. Now that seems to have gone out the window, but they're the sort of things that I'm passionate about. Now there are other things that will come along, but that's my main focus for standing.
Okay. You've kind of answered my other question then. I was going to say, if elected, what will your aim be for Newport?
My aim for Newport will be certainly to look at what the issues are in greater detail for Newport West. Certainly, I'm standing for Newport West. I have a history of dealing with things for Newport, so I know things to do with Newport. I did in another life. I did the LG development. I helped to put the site together for the LG site. I put the Rodney Parade site together. I've had many a scrap with Newport City Council regarding Friars Walk. I dealt in the early stages with Mumbank sidings and the Whitehead Hill site. So I know a lot about the development of Newport. At the moment I'm helping Cillian to take on the University of South Wales regarding their proposals on the campus site, which I think has been appalling. And there's cross-party support on that. So it's not a question of being just fighting for UKIP's corner. There has to be a responsibility to the people of Newport West and Newport wider Newport. Yes. So that has to be taken on board. Politicians sometimes, they get into Parliament, they swan off and you never see them again. No, there has to be a responsibility to the people who will finally elect you. If I'm elected, that's the sort of things that I would do. Because I'm not a blooming politician. I would like them apples.
One of the questions I have is, why are you running under UKIP and not running as an independent?
This is strange and almost meteoric, because I joined UKIP for what I believed were their core beliefs, which was fine. And I joined last September. Since then, I've become part of the committee. I've become chairman of UKIP Newport. And the party wanted someone to stand. Now, I'm a resident in Newport. So let's put my money where my mouth is and actually go in and stand for Newport West as UKIP. No, I don't want to stand as anything else. I'm doing it partly for UKIP. If I wasn't doing it for UKIP, I wouldn't be doing it. Why should I bother? But I've joined UKIP. I've been asked to do it. I've agreed to do it. And we're going to give it our best shot. There's people who wouldn't want us to stand because people could actually gain out of the polarisation between Labour and Conservatives. But in actually standing for UKIP, we're actually giving someone a bit, people can vote for. So it may be a worry to the other parties that there's another person in the frame. Tough duck.
I'm going to ask you some questions now that I've received online. Would you agree UKIP is struggling to find a cause now that we have voted to leave the European Union?
Voting to leave is one thing. Actually getting out is another thing. So you have so many people who were Remainers in the past still wanting to put their finger in the pie and producing a very, very soft Brexit. So I want to make sure that we actually get out. Actually, it's a bit like the gambler. You've got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. If needs be, run. Get out there fast. Because the British people have given, like a lifeboat, to get out of Europe. A lifeboat from the Titanic. Europe is sinking. At the moment, we're still tied with a rope to the Titanic. We've got to cut that rope before we go down with it. I want to make sure that happens, and I want to make sure that whatever we do in Britain is in the best interest of the British people. Put on the rest of the world, and I know there's a political group called Britain First. I wish they had nicked the name, but putting the British people first is the highest priority. Should be the highest priority for any party, and not just the elites in Westminster, but the ordinary people, the people with pensions, entitlements, and benefits who are worried sick because of the way the structure of the country's become. So someone has to hold the Conservatives to account, and I don't want a really Corbynistic left-wing Labour. There has to be a middle route, and there has to be something that accommodates the 17.5 million people who voted out. So that's why I'm there. I think I've answered the question.
I suppose my follow-on question to that would be, when we are out of the European Union, what will be UKIP's purpose then?
I love hypothetical questions because I'm not very good at hypothetical answers. Okay. The future, if you think of Star Trek, it's the unknown territory. Right? So things are going to pan out. But it does depend on your actions now. The future does depend on your actions now. And that's the important bit, that you do the right things now. And that helps to define the future.
Would UKIP Wales be doing better without Neil Hamilton as leader?
We have what we have. One, I haven't met Neil Hamilton. Based on his reputation, I probably wouldn't have voted for him. But here's a biggie. From what I've seen of Neil Hamilton, the way that he performs, the things that he says, his arguments, I've written to him. I've had detailed responses back from Neil Hamilton, which I haven't had from any other person. So you have to judge as you find. Now, the whole of UKIP, before this election came about, was in transition. It's in transition as to the connect between the headquarters and grassroots. In fact, there was a meeting in Port Talbot with that very thing in mind. So that was beginning to. We were looking forward to meetings in which we could actually make that connection and actually make the changes in UKIP. I think that the other political parties, particularly the Conservatives, saw this and saw it as a threat that the grassroots would actually connect with the tops in UKIP, because that would produce perhaps a recognisable party that people could actually identify more with, not just the European Union and coming out. So UKIP in transition was an opportunity for the enemy to actually have a go at UKIP. But the grassroots in UKIP are still there. I'm still there. Our friends and colleagues in Newport and throughout Wales and throughout the UK are still there. I don't know how many we got. We got a lot of people standing. The other parties would rather that we didn't stand. I mean, say they've changed Project Fear and put Project Fear on steroids. If you don't vote Tory, you know, if you're a Leaver and you don't vote Tory, you're not going to get anything. That's not true, because you may not be able to trust a large Tory majority.
I suppose one of my questions would be, what is the purpose of UKIP in Wales? Because there's a lot of criticism saying that UKIP is an English party, not a Welsh party. So why do you feel that UKIP is significant or important in Wales?
UKIP's important in Wales because the other parties were stagnating. You only had a Conservative party that was in opposition, always in opposition, and then you only had what would be a coalition, either Labour or Labour plus Plaid. You didn't have much of a choice elsewhere. What UKIP does in Wales is actually give, again, an opportunity for other things to be considered. Certainly the economic side, and certainly sometimes agreeing with Labour, sometimes agreeing with the Conservatives, but there needs to be someone who will actually speak up and will hold their feet to the fire. And that's not been done. And that's why it stagnates. And that's why Wales, the Assembly, doesn't do much, as far as I'm concerned. So the point about this, the Assembly can do things, you see, because a lot of it is devolved issues. Planning, education, highways, environment, health are all devolved issues to Wales. So as an MP, there's not much I could do on that. And you contact your local MP in Wales now on those issues, and you'll say, oh, these are devolved issues. Okay, but there is the national umbrella. So when you talk about UKIP in Wales for this election, you're talking about the MPs who will go to Parliament, who go to Westminster on a national basis, because the local basis is dealt with by AMs. So UKIP in Wales has a position, and you mentioned Neil Hamilton. I've seen that Neil Hamilton, some of the things that he says are very important and very, very, very important in democratic terms, because some of the things that the Socialist Assembly have come out with are very undemocratic and have gone under the radar of the ordinary person. So I think that it's important that Wales has a UKIP, and I'll be part, and I'm part of UKIP Wales. But for this election, it has a much wider role.
When it comes to UKIP isn't under the same kind of scrutiny that MPs or AMs in Labour or Conservatives are under. They're not under any strong policies. So do you believe that UKIP's lack of policies and lack of scrutiny to its AMs and MPs makes UKIP weaker?
No, UKIP has a diversity which the others don't have. People all talk about equality and diversity, but UKIP does have a diverse group. You've got some who are more to the right, you've got some to the left, but you've got a group that takes up the middle ground. Now, that's important, that you're able to have that. But there is that common focus on, I'm pinching this from a Wales Act, which was the Wellbeing and Future Generations Wales Act 2015, which says that we should promote and protect the culture and heritage of the Welsh language, and we should actually promote and protect the culture and heritage of the UK. Now, that's UKIP's role as guardian, rather than the elites in the Tory elites or the Labour left. The important bit is the British population, the British people. The other parties hate it because they call it the populist movement. They will give democracy another label. I'm for democracy, but it's not palatable to the other parties who will give it another populist label.
How can you expect to win seats when your leader, Paul Nuttall, lost a parliamentary by-election in the Brexit capital of Stoke?
Paul Nuttall isn't standing here. We haven't got a leader in Parliament. So, what you've got is Stan Edwards here. So, do you want to vote for Stan Edwards or not? Because Paul Nuttall isn't standing here, Paul Nuttall's standing somewhere else. And we haven't got a leader in Parliament. So, the answer is, yes, you will have people's opinions elsewhere, and people's winnings and losings elsewhere, but this one is giving people the choice here. So you're hearing things that I'm saying now. You don't hear those things elsewhere. Because not only am I UKIP, but I am a person, and I'm standing for Newport West. So there's stuff that Paul Nuttall couldn't do for Newport West. There's stuff that anyone else who comes from other parts of the country couldn't do for Newport West. But I actually live in Newport West, which is an important point. So Paul Nuttall isn't standing here. I am.
How can UKIP be accepted as a credible alternative party in Wales when its Assembly ministers split and join the Conservative group?
I'd say they were never part of us anyway. I mean, see, to be a member of UKIP and vote for UKIP, you've got to believe in UKIP, win or lose. No, people complain about Hamilton, but at least he's standing in there batting. Now, people may change their minds about Hamilton because there has to be a unity in UKIP. Fine. But as I said earlier, UKIP is in transition, and that was an opportunity to the enemy. Now, when you're talking about the Assembly, this isn't the Assembly election. This is a parliamentary election. The Assembly election where you got UKIP members in Wales was on proportional representation, where people voted for the party, not the people. So that's why we woke up and found out who we got. But we have to work with what we've got. Each different election, we have to work with what we've got. And it's a distillation process. It's a cascading process. It's one where we will actually define and distill at the end of the day what we've actually got in UKIP. Because it's new. Well, it's relatively new compared to the other parties.
What I think people are worried about is them voting UKIP and then UKIP MPs turning to Conservatives after Brexit's been completed. So how can people be sure when they vote for UKIPers that they'll stay in UKIP?
Look for someone who is, at this time, who is... it's like Foghorn Leghorn. He says, I'm a cutting, but you ain't a bleeding. In other words, you're not listening to me, boy. Listen, these people weren't with us in the first place. I wasn't a member of any other party. I've never been a member of a political party until I joined UKIP. So I'm not going anywhere when I leave here, if I leave UKIP, because I'm not leaving UKIP. UKIP may be in the transition, may change in the future, and we'll see how that goes. But there's no reason for me to leave UKIP. Now, there are people who, because they think that Theresa May's going to do all wonders, are jumping ship into Tory. Wrong move. Wrong move. Because you don't know what you're going to get. You don't want... I don't trust flipper-floppers. People who change. I don't like changelings. No matter what the party.
Surely the only party who can realistically achieve the best Brexit deal is the Conservatives. Therefore, why field a candidate in Newport?
Who said that?
I'm not sure.
No, but it's a rhetorical question. Who says that? Because Theresa May was a Remainer. She will do all sorts of deals. She may she'll keep her open. She may keep her open borders, and she'll blame everything and say, "Oh, I've done the Brexit." Has she done the Brexit? She'll do the best she can for the Conservative Party, no matter what. And believe me, yes, she will get a fairly large majority. I believe that. But a Tory majority doesn't do much for the ordinary people in the British Isles. It's a blooming dangerous thing, a large Tory majority, and we've seen it in the past. And it causes a swing of the pendulum towards the Tories, which will cause an equal swing to something horrible afterwards, because we've seen that in the past. And we've had to wait for the pendulum to blooming dampen down. The thing with Labour, you've got Labour gone to the Corbynite left, which produces an opportunity for a massive swing to something that we wouldn't want, which would be a massive Tory majority. The whole point of standing for UKIP and for people to vote UKIP is to make sure that, okay, hopefully that majority isn't that great, and that we can hold Theresa May's feet to the fire, and we can get blooming exit from blooming Europe. Because no one else is going to do it. And once she's got a majority, she can do what she likes. Because she's a politician. And that's why I want to be there, because I'm not a politician.
Would UKIP Welsh MPs prioritise the wishes of Paul Nuttall or Nathan Gill?
Paul Nuttall isn't standing in Newport. Nathan Gill is up in North Wales. He's not in Newport. I'm standing in Newport, and whoever wins, if I win, I'll be the parliamentary person in UKIP, in Parliament. So we're not talking about we're not talking about the Nathan Gills of this world. We're not talking about the Paul Nuttalls of this world. Because we're talking about whoever gets to Parliament. Whoever gets to Parliament, you're going to sort out who's the leader in the parliamentary party. So these are red herrings.
Considering that over 200,000 jobs in Wales rely on exports to the European Union, and that without tariff-free access to these jobs would be at risk, do they accept that for Wales remaining in the single market should be a negotiating priority?
Wales will be out. Don't forget, we were a net receiver from the European Union. We put more in than we blooming got out. So the bits that are coming out to Wales, that will be part of the transition agreement when we come out of the European Union. So Wales is going to be better or worse off. I think we'll have a focused deal for Wales. And that will be negotiated by between Westminster and Cardiff as to what that's going to be. Now, I can't see why Wales should be any worse off having their money from Westminster than having it from Europe, because you'll have more control over it from Westminster than you would from an unelected parliament or assembly in the European Union. So it's a red herring to say, oh, well, these jobs depend on Europe. They depend on Europe if you depended on funny money and people that you can't trust. But at least with Westminster, you've got people that you can actually chuck out of Parliament. You can't get rid of the European Union. So whatever jobs are going to be more secure for us, who's to say that the monies were coming to us, there was going to be other countries coming into the European Union, other countries that would be worse off than Wales? And who's to say that our monies that we pay in wouldn't go there? So where would the Wales money be then? No, this has got to be properly assessed when we come out. And we've got to come out to make the assessment. And we've got to come out hard with the assessment to make sure it's the best deal for the British Isles.
Does UKIP think that they've contributed to the rise in hate crimes in the UK?
Well, UKIP have expressed a lot of views of the ordinary British people. The enemies of UKIP would argue that UKIP has, but the people of the UK are very passionate about their heritage. Hate crimes are terrible wherever they come from. I don't think UKIP has. The enemies of the British Isles, the enemies of UKIP, would use this argument. You see, the British are very tolerant, kind people. The enemies of the British would use our tolerance and our kindness against us and accuse us of being intolerant and unkind. Now, that's not fair. That's straight out of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. That's exactly what the far left and the radical left would actually do to us, to make us feel guilty for being just trying to protect our own interests. So I can understand the media who actually don't like UKIP, who don't like the actual democratic views of the British people, to use all kinds of arguments against us. So no, UKIP hasn't. Whatever's there is inherent anyway.
Jeff Cuthbert, the Police and Crime Commissioner in Newport, said that Brexit gave some people a sense of licence to go out and commit hate crimes. Do you believe there's some truth in that?
So, where does he get, or he or she?
Jeff Cuthbert.
Right. Where do they get this stuff from? Because what gives him the right to say that? The 17.5 million British people would probably disagree with him. So I disagree with him.
Staying along those lines of hate crime, a question I got time and time again online was why UKIP perceived as racist.
Again, it's what the media would like it to be. Hang on, let's define racism. Everyone in the world belongs to some kind of race. Racism is where you actually put one race as being higher or lower than the other. So UKIP doesn't do that. UKIP's not racist, as far as that's concerned. So you have to make sure that, because if usually we see that if people don't like what you say to them, they'll shout racist because it's popular amongst certain people. And it's not true. It's not true. I'm not against any race. Fine. But there are some peoples in this world who do things which are not kind. And just because you identify those people for the things that they do and the things that they believe and their ideologies, just because you label that, just because you identify those things, they'll run and shout racist. and we are not. The British people generally are kind and tolerant until they are pushed. The British people are quite an eclectic lot. The Celts were pushed by the Saxons. The Saxons were, the Celts were pushed by the Romans. The Romans went out and the Saxons came, and then the Vikings came, and then the Normans came, and then we've got all the people in the Commonwealth. We got a very broad brush people in this country, all different races, all different colours. There's only one colour I don't like, and that's green. I don't like the Greens.
Why do you think people have that stereotype for UKIP and no other party?
Because it's putting the finger on British culture and heritage. They don't like people identifying what's actually going on as a sub operation in this country. They don't like it, so they'll give it any kind of label.
What is UKIP's policy on funding the NHS? Do they acknowledge that without the magnificent contribution that doctors, nurses, surgeons, psychotherapists, cardiologists, etc., from different nations across the world, it would collapse?
I believe in the NHS. I actually do, and I believe that at the point of delivery, they do a good job. Now, having said that, if you're talking about the NHS UK, it's different between NHS England and Wales, because the NHS Wales is actually a devolved function to the Assembly. And I've heard reports, anecdotally, that actually NHS in England is better than NHS in Wales, the way that the people treat it. It's not just the way they treat it. Even in the Royal Gwent, the hospital in this constituency, it's like the curate's egg. The surgery, which I've had recently, was excellent. The nursing, excellent. Right? There are some departments which have a history of not being so good, so it's a bit like the curate's egg. It's good in part, and some parts are very, very good. The problem with the NHS is that it's actually top-loaded with admin. And the people who are actually at the blooming forefront aren't getting the money, the nurses. They'll bring in contract nurses who get paid more, and all of that sort of stuff. And it sticks in the craw of the people who are on the front line working. Now, if suddenly you had the private sector come in, the private sector would at one swipe cut a lot of the admin, because it's not the operating function. So what the government funded bit don't like is that a proper axe to the bits which aren't contributing to patient care, which is a massive administration. Once you start looking at that in detail, that's when they have a panic. So it's at the point of need, we want to make sure that we've got the best. Now, in Wales, as an MP, if I was an MP, there's not that much they could do because it's a devolved function to the Assembly. But UK-wide, they have to make sure that the funding for the NHS, which actually comes to Wales through the Barnett formula, as to what Wales has in funding from England. But that has to be reassessed, formally reassessed, properly reassessed, as to what's actually you need in the NHS. Everyone should have a healthcare in this country, no matter high or low. And that's what Bevan wanted, Bevan wanted. An NHS for everyone. Not one where you're not going to get it and then you've got to go off to just to get some private healthcare somewhere. Just for the rich or those who can afford it. It has to be for everyone. And I believe that. So I don't believe that you get it just by selling it off, because private sector is not going to be accountable. We've seen this time and time again when things get sold off, that they're not accountable to the people. They're accountable to the shareholders. So the NHS mustn't happen to the NHS. But that's not to say that you shouldn't actually have a very thorough assessment of the NHS and how it's run.
With business in Newport, including Friars Walk, do you believe Friars Walk was a good or bad development? And how do you believe we can improve enterprise and business in Newport?
When you say in Newport, do you mean Greater Newport or Central Newport?
City. Let's keep it city.
The city. Newport suffers like any other town centre and city centre. I'm not talking about the large ones now, but it suffers because of the change in retailing. New Friars Walk wasn't properly assessed from the outset, and what's happening now demonstrates that. I've actually written papers on that. I lecture my students using Friars Walk as an example. Newport, as I remember it, in the 50s and 60s, when I used to come with my mum shopping, come down to the market and visit all the shops and remember it, it was a bustling centre. It was like coming to Cardiff in the 50s and 60s. That's when you didn't have the car. That's when you had the cities had what's known as intensive growth in the cities. But the more growth that you had, the more the Britain grew, and the more the people had the car, and the more that that formed constraints to the centre, then you had extensive growth, which formed sub-centres. Cumbraen impacted on Newport. When they were going for Friars Walk, the arguments of Newport City Council was that we can attract people back from Cumbraen. That's a load of codswallop, because Cumbraen's a success. And reversibility in urban dynamics is very, very difficult. So to say that you get spending power back from Cumbraen or get spending power back from Spitty is foolishness. And it was false economy. Now, you've got a very nice development at Friars Walk, but it doesn't fulfill the function that they thought that they were going to get. In fact, they've had to change the mix. You've got more eating places than you could throw a blooming stick at. And that has an impact not only on Newport Central, but other eating places around the Newport Centre as well. Because people have only got so much spending power. They've only got so much money. So they're going to spend it in Friars Walk or in eating places, or they're going to spend it elsewhere. People don't understand that retailing is to do with demand. It is demand orientated. And if you have a look at demand, it depends on spending power is one of the factors of demand, one of the functions of demand, and part of the other one is that's income and spending power, and the other one is on consumer preference. People actually have a choice as to where they will spend their money. And lo and behold, all the market assessed that people didn't want to spend their money in Newport. They'll spend it elsewhere. No, they were spending it in Cribbs Causeway. They were spending it New Cardiff, Cumbraen. There are alternatives. And once you've got alternatives and people have got the choice, then you will have not the Friars Walk, not the Newport that you expected. Because they built Friars Walk when there was 26% vacancy rate in the rest of Newport. Goodness me. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to work this out. So, Newport's going to have to balance out at an equilibrium level as to what is going to be there. I don't know where that level is going to be. No one does, because you've got a lot of empty buildings. You've got a lot of buildings which have floors above ground floor, which are empty. That takes a lot of thought and a lot of working out, which you've got to have the desire and the will to actually do that and accept the situation regarding Newport. It's a bit like grief counselling. You first of all got to get to the point of accepting what's happened, and they haven't.
In business in Newport, what would you like to see return to the public sector, and what do you believe should be in the private sector?
Private sector is a market. So if the market perceives something there, fine. And the private sector will make its investment. There's no problem in that. The other thing is then the public sector as to what the perception is as to how we can increase jobs and with that improve our spending power. But you never know, even if you have public sector jobs, you don't know where they're going to spend their money. So they're going to spend it in Newport or in Cumbrian. So you never know where that money is going to be spent. So intervention in the market may look good, but there's a lot of unintended consequences. In Friars Walk, there were unintended consequences. When you have a look at the law of unintended consequences, you look at ignorance, error, and something called an imperious immediacy of interest. In other words, you've got your blinkers on, you're looking at something, and you're not looking at anything else, or any of the collateral damage that can happen elsewhere. And that's a problem with intervention. You don't know what's going to happen. So, yes, we'd love to see more public or private sector jobs. You get what you can, wherever you can. But no one can guarantee what's coming. You can guarantee in the public sector if the government says, oh, well, we'll open an office here. Okay, you will have some jobs there. But you never say how long for or what the impact that's going to be. We've seen that in the past. That's government intervention in the market.
Why does UKIP feel it is acceptable to fund its policies by reducing foreign aid, impacting the poorest and most vulnerable people in the world? The Welsh share of 350 million a week is enough to build a brand new hospital every month. At what point will UKIP stand up for the people of Wales and demand what the Welsh NHS sees every penny promised during the referendum?
I think I've answered that point, which is that a lot of monies were going out to Europe, and we were only going to get a net return. So where is the gross money going to be? There's still going to be the relationship between Westminster and Cardiff as to where that funding is going to be. You're talking about the foreign aid funding. Well, that's very difficult to tap into because we should get it back, and it should be for the use of the British people, for the NHS or other social services. Anything else is needed. But a lot of it is because of the effects of climate taxation, the taxation on the wealth of the country through carbon tax, whereby we are taxed in respect of our wealth, and a proportion of that goes to the other countries as part of the EU and the United Nations Agenda 21, which is social justice and the global redistribution of wealth. I don't want the global redistribution of wealth. I want the UK redistribution of wealth. No, the Conservatives may not want the UK redistribution of wealth, but we do. We want to make sure that our people, the British people, actually have a good shake. So come on, let's hold their feet to the fire on that one as well, and make sure that the British people have a good shake. That's what I want. No, I don't have any facts and figures. Because do you know why I haven't got facts and figures? Because I'm not a blooming politician. They go around with facts and figures in their pockets to make them look good.
What will UKIP do to help the LGBT community if you're elected?
Personally?
As a politician?
As a politician, there are laws, there are things in place. I'm a Christian, right? So there's certain things I believe in. Also, I have friends who are gay. I know people who are gay. I don't know a lot of people, but they're the kindest and nicest people I know. So I'm not entering that territory. There's too many people who would want to make me look unkind and unloving just to make me look like a Pharisee. But I do believe in the Bible, and I do believe in those things. Now, there are other people in other faiths who would have a totally obnoxious way of dealing with these issues. So I suggest you ask them the same question.
That's all I've got.
There's only one thing I'd like to say is that as far as UKIP is concerned, in this election in Newport, I am the only true Leaver candidate. The others will say that they are now expressing the will, or will express the will of the British people. I'm like a stick of rock. You break me, I've got leave all the way through. You break the other candidates, they've got remain. Believe it or not. Now, come on, you've got to make sure what you actually believe you're voting for in this election.